And to think, Father Mike Schmitz needed an entire year to go through the whole Bible. You know, there was a young man who was going off to college. And before he went off to college, he had a kind of weak faith. And of course, going to college pretty much obliterated it. He learned about all these things. He was going to be a scientist. He wanted to do all these things. And so the more he learned about science, the more he learned about mathematics, the more he learned about the things that, we human beings can do, the more he became convinced that there was no God. We don't have a need for God. If there even was a God, who really cares? This young man continued and kept pushing and was very aggressive, very assertive, graduated from college, got a good job, started to move up a little bit on the ladder. This particular individual went from place to place and kept trying to tell people the only thing that's important is this world. Just invest in this world, get yourself right, and do it now, because if you keep doing all these other things, you're just going to be wasting your time. And so we need to be investing and learning and doing and creating and doing all these things that we human beings can do. Until that one night when he had a conversation with someone who asked him questions that he was not prepared to answer. Ask him any question about mathematics, he's got the answer. Ask him questions about psychology, ask him questions about biology, had the answers, he was ready to go. But ask him that one question, why do we exist? Where did we come from? And the questions can go on. Those deeper philosophical questions that press the mind. Guess what he did? He dismissed all those questions as useless. Sounds like a lot of stories we've heard today, doesn't it? I was that person. When I got out of college, I had it. I was done with all this religion stuff. Who really needed it anyhow? The problem was that I had become very two-dimensional in my thinking. I'd become so two-dimensional that all there was what you could see. There was nothing else. There was no depth to my thought. And that so influenced me, being so surrounded by that same thinking, that it was so much easier to just say, yeah, we don't need to go any further. We don't need to push any harder. But we do. For several generations now, we've had a lot of these superficial encounters with each other. I think it's becoming more and more. I don't think we're really delving into the depth as we ought to. And I think what happens is it blinds us. See, being two-dimensional, we miss out on what's really real. We miss out on what's really important. You know what has happened, don't you? You know what has happened. Jesus is risen. Finally, 7 years out, we got it. Couldn't sneak it in at all. He is truly risen. I look at the disciples on Easter Sunday morning. I look at those disciples, and they were crushed. They were crushed the day before. Think about it. They had to lay Jesus' body in the tomb. This was the one they thought was going to rouse up the might and have armies that would overwhelm and would be able to get rid of the Romans and take over their land once again. They were so overwhelmed with their emotion. And then they had to bury Jesus hastily and go forth and still celebrate the Passover. Now, could you imagine losing someone like that and then still having Sunday dinner tomorrow? Think about it. They were so overwhelmed. What was missing when they returned to the grave, when they returned to the tomb, was his body. What was missing was their ability to see the impossible. Think about it for a second. They were so crushed. They were so overwhelmed with emotion and grief, they didn't understand. I mean, Jesus, how many times in the Gospels does Jesus say this is going to happen? And they still didn't get it. I mean, you talk about blinded. Jesus himself said, no, this is how it's got to be. This is what it's all about. It doesn't get any more complicated. They're going to put to death the Son of God. They're going to lay him in a tomb. They're going to think they won. Those humans that wanted human power, that wanted to just keep it two-dimensional, they don't know that God has another dimension. God is going to raise that body up. And God is going to finally answer the question, of sin. And God did raise him up. And that should be joy for you and for me sitting here. We have to peer into the death. You know, I look at the modern world. When I was going through my own period of turning away from God, when I was going through that, I know this is going to be hard to believe for some of you young people, there were no cell phones. We were still attached to a wall. There were no computers unless you really had an awful lot of money, and the computers could hardly do anything. There were no, like, Cablevision had just started. There were only like 13 channels on TV. There wasn't much to watch. There wasn't a lot that vied for our attention, and yet still I was caught up and led away by the snares of the devil. After that conversation that I had had, the one thing I began realizing is there's something missing. There is something missing. Think about everybody today. God is trying to get people's attention. God is doing his best to call out to us. God is trying to show us that he's got our back, that he wants us for himself. And not only does he want us for himself, God will become one of us to give us hope. And what do? We take out our phone and flip through Facebook, and we start doing all these different things, and we spend all this time staring at this thing and not noticing the people around us. And I believe that it has really made the two-dimensional attention span widespread to the point where we no longer make room in our lives for the impossible. Do we make room in our lives for the impossible? Now think about it for a second. The disciples were not expecting the impossible. The disciples were not expecting to show up and have an empty tomb, much less get to talk to Jesus again. Is there room in your life for the impossible? Or are you so caught up, so overwhelmed, so bound by this life that you no longer see the beauty of the impossible? What happened defies logic. As one of our professors in the seminary said, if the resurrection really happened, if 160 pounds of matter just disappeared all of a sudden, that would have created a seismic event that would have taken the whole Middle East out. But it didn't. God raised Jesus Christ from the dead. Jesus is risen. And that, my dear brothers and sisters, is our proclamation for the next few weeks. That's our proclamation because that says God answered the question that the devil first asked. God is the one that said, no, Satan, no, you can't fool my people. No, you can't offer them power. No, you can't offer them glory. Only I can do that. And God is now offering it to you. So what's the impossible thing God is trying to do for you now? What's the impossible thing that you think is you can't overcome it? You can't win. Whatever it is, turn to God and expect the impossible. I've seen miracles. I have with my own eyes seen miracles. It wasn't until that one time when I sat in total silence in Medjugorje, staring at a sunset, that the vistas opened up to me. That our Blessed Mother said to me, no, I've got a better plan. My son needs you. And all of a sudden, with my mind racing and my thoughts going, I realized, yeah, I'm missing out on something. I'm missing out on the impossible. There is not one person that knew me that would have ever said to you that I was going to be a priest. And yet here I stand before you as a priest. Expect the impossible, and it will happen in God's time. And so, my dear brothers and sisters, tonight we have these young people here who are embracing the faith more fully. We have young people here who, for the first time ever, we experience the grace of Christ through the sacrament of baptism, through the sacrament of confirmation, through the sacrament of the Most Holy Eucharist, something we all take for granted. I want to be clear. Every single sacrament is our experience of the impossible. Every single sacrament we experience is our experience of the impossible. God himself, the creator of the universe, as we heard in that first reading, God himself not only became a human being, but he took on our condition so completely that when his body was laid in the tomb, it was that same body that we will now receive. It is that same blood that we will now receive. That sounds like impossible to me. That same Holy Spirit that will be conferred on you in confirmation, that sounds impossible to me. That same grace that will be affected, that will change your souls from being pagans into Christians, that will give you a new hope and a new life and a new vision, that's the impossible. And so tonight, as we witness these sacraments, my dear brothers and sisters, we will witness the impossible. But then ask yourselves, with all the stories that are sitting here right now, what other impossible should we start expecting? Bring it to God, bring it to Jesus, and allow God to do what God does so well. God will do the impossible. You know what has happened. You know Jesus rose from the dead. Now live like that is actually true. Live as if the impossible happened. God bless you.